Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So today we are going to talk about how a recent Supreme Court decision is really, really good for the Democratic Party long term, and it has nothing to do with fundraising. I mentioned this in a recent video, and I definitely should have expanded on it because a lot of questions. Okay, so we know that the Republican Party often votes against the American people, casts votes that are specifically designed to make it harder for the average American, so they can then turn around and blame it on the Democratic Party if the Democratic Party is in power. You see this with the price gouging bill when it came to gas, the baby formula thing, right? So they vote against the solution, and then they blame the Democratic Party for it, right? The Democratic Party doesn't really do this. They don't go out of their way to trip up the Republican Party at the expense of the American people. They tend to just allow Republican policies to show themselves. And that's what's going to happen here. In a lot of ways, long term, the Democratic Party is going to come out way on top because of this. But it happens at the expense of Americans living in Republican-dominated states. This decision reverted the power back to the states. The states that are banning it are Republican-dominated. What happens? Like, people are focusing rightfully on the harm these bans are going to cause. But step back for a second. Pretend you're that isn't your concern. Pretend you don't actually care about people as individuals for a moment. What happens? So there's more babies, right? Well, going along with more babies means there's more mothers who aren't in the workforce, right? So there's a decrease in tax revenue. But there's more mothers who aren't working. So there's going to be more of a need for social safety nets. There are also more kids, which means there's more of a need for school. However, as previously covered, there's going to be less tax revenue. So, what's the only option? Cut services. So what happens? You have an increase in poverty, an increase in income inequality, which leads to an increase in crime. That's just one aspect. When it comes to people who are more forward-thinking, people who are innovators, do you think they want to live in a state that is dominated by a bunch of old, failed ideas? No, they're hopping the first bus out of town, right? Going somewhere else. So the state then suffers brain drain. Now, if you're a business that is looking to set up a new facility in an age that is very technologically driven, do you want to go to a place where there's no innovators and the education system is strained and underfunded? Probably not, right? This is going to take about 10 years to show itself, but this will happen. It's not a maybe. This is going to occur. And it will be incredibly pronounced. You will see a big difference when it comes to the economic stability and the viability of Republican-dominated states versus Democratic-dominated states, right? It's like that healthcare thing that we talked about. If you live in a area that is primarily Democratic, you live longer. there's going to be a whole lot of stuff like that. The difference is this is going to be super visible. So, long term, as far as the institution of the Democratic Party, this is good. This is good news for them. Because the Republican Party ends up punishing Republican voters and turning them against the Republican Party. And the whole time, the Democratic Party gets to sit there and say, no, this is a horrible idea. You'll see, I don't know, probably 2-3 years for the first bit to really start happening, where you're going to start to see the strain on social safety nets. It'll be, 6-7 years before you really start to see the strain on schools. And then it's just, from there, it just happens really quick. This will happen. It's not a maybe. So, I don't think that the Democratic Party will play softball on this simply because of this. But for the more cynical in the Democratic Party establishment, oh, believe me, they've already ran these numbers. And it will factor into their decision making. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.